Hi everyone, Mr. Peabody here. I'm going to talk to you about the movie 1917, and I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything for you, but I do recommend you don't watch this in the cinemas. The the job that they did with the trailer was fantastic. The trailer looks fantastic, but that is not reflective of the movie. They've cut it together in such a sequence that they're showing different scenes cut together to make them look like the same scene. So, yeah, the trailer, not a good thing to go off. Are those scenes in the movie? Yes, but not put together the way you think they are. Now, 1917 is a World War One epic, and the premise behind the whole thing was that you've got some guys, you've got 1,600 men behind enemy lines, and well, they're British, and they've received intelligence that the Germans have got a strong position, that the British are about to attack, so they want to call off the attack because they don't want all these men getting wiped out. Now let's look at 1917 and what they had available for intelligence. They did use aeroplanes for aerial reconnaissance, in which case you had a slow plane that flew over the other trenches, the enemy trenches, with binoculars, and sometimes they had a camera. It was a very dangerous job because you had these slow planes flying over enemy trenches and taking pictures and using binoculars. And when I say slow, these planes, their top speed was like between 75 and 100 miles per hour. So on the ground they'd be going very fast, but in the air not so much. And they're also flying over thousands of guys that have all got weapons. So all guys, they can shoot at them. So being an aerial reconnaissance flyer in World War One was not a great profession because most of them died. You had to fly over the enemy trenches and then you had to get back with information. In which case, an enemy fighter had no trouble shooting you down, and you had, as I said, you had thousands of guys on the ground that had weapons that could fire at you. So it was a very risky job. That's one point I want to go into in this movie because they had this intelligence. Well, intelligence back then, not so reliable. But so they send two guys from way back behind the lines to they send two guys to relay a message behind enemy lines to a commander that was going to attack the next day and tell him to stop the attack because otherwise his men was going to be cut down. If it was that urgent, then wouldn't you think they'd send up another plane and just drop a message? But the writer himself says this is a story he got from his grandfather. Not so much, I don't think so. I think what he did was he took the same premise from a movie that was released in 1981. It was an Australian movie called Gallipoli. And in the last 10 minutes, you had a guy that had to run through the troops, through the trenches, to relay a message to stop the attack, to stop guys getting cut down. I think that's probably more where that story came from, because when I saw the trailer for 1917, that's the first thing that popped into my head. And yes, that's basically the same story, but they've taken the last 10 minutes of Gallipoli and turned it into a whole epic movie, which is not that epic. Cinematography, they they give you widescapes and they show you, look at all of this, and it's like, eh. And they give you all this dialogue, and you're thinking, what? And they give you a movie score that doesn't keep pace with the movie itself. It sort of chops and changes and makes it sound more dramatic where it shouldn't be, and no dramatic where it should be. So it sort of falls down in a number of categories. Odin might like it because, well, when they change protagonists in the movie, one guy says to the other guy, "Do you know the way?" And the other guy says, "Yes, I know the way." That's about as much fun as Odin's going to have with that movie. It's bad. It's like dragging your feet through mud watching this movie. It's slow paced. It's all over the place. It's messy. And they only get to the point right at the end. So it's a big draw on your concentration. But the point of the World War One campaign was, it always was, it was a war of attrition. All right, as long as I've got more men than you do, I'm gonna win. That was the whole point, right? So they'd send men, they'd send them out of the trenches, send them into, machine gun fire and everything like that. They get mowed down, and then the other side would do the same thing. They'd send them up, and they get mowed down. And it was who had the most men, who could have the last man standing. That's the sad part about World War One, right? And World War Two was not that far off the same thing, but a little bit different. But World War One was very much a war of attrition, and that's no way to fight a war. In fact, let's not have a war at all. All it is some guy high up wanting something that the other guy's got, and then sending men off to fight to get it. So, as far as I'm concerned, they can go get it themselves. We don't need to send soldiers anywhere to fight for putting money into pockets of guys that don't care about people. Anyway, so my thoughts on 1917 is it's a crap movie. It's crap. It really stinks, and they could have done so much more. They had a wealth of information. They had a wealth of stories to pull from, and they pulled this one, and they said, "Look at our story." And I looked at your story, and I found it lacking. Anyway, sorry if I missed anything, but that's my thoughts. See ya.